Fun fact, I just left the Discord I was in. The reason why the music didn't start is because I'm totally not paying attention today. Duh. You fucking dickweed. I'm supposed to be say so on the reading streams. Now you made me say the F word, and now I sent like the stupid thing that the others Discord. What was it called? Can't they? The stupid thing from my server, that, from the other server that was just like, I'm deleting. I fucking hate it! I'm reading it! I'm supposed to be nice, calm. Today we're supposed to be reading Ender's Game, but I can't stop reading this thing! Why is it so cursed? Oh, hi everybody. I hope you're good. Let me see. Okay, there you go. I found the page. So, it's the thing in Shitpost Squad. It's so freaking cursed. I hate it. Let me just switch over. Okay, there you go, everybody. Hello. I'm still gonna wear my glasses today, so I don't actually end up blinking too much. So the music is gonna stay on. And you know what? I'm gonna turn on the music for myself, so at least I can know what's going on. There you go. Hi, everybody. Well, I can kind of say this is completely my fault. The 2 minutes delay may not seem like anything to anyone, but I like to go on schedule, and I like to be on schedule, and missing that like 2 minutes mark is already unacceptable. I don't know. I'm just really freaking dumb. Like, and Saturdays are like the worst days to do anything because I just get so freaking lazy. And yes, I was hanging out with a bunch of friends, and yes, I don't really know, man. What am I doing in my life? Anyway, good afternoon, everybody. We're reading Ender's Game today, and yeah, basically on the title, we stopped at what chapter? There's the one with the stupid piece of shit. We stopped at chapter 4, like the beginning of chapter 4. So let me just put the book right here. Also, why is my eyes just looking up? Okay, I see. Let me just adjust the camera a little bit. Okay, there you go. Okay, there you go. Hi. My brain is like dead because I was playing like Left 4 Dead 2 just now, and I have no clue what to do. I want to read, but I don't really know how to go about anymore. Like, my brain is actually completely freaking gone for some reason. I just can't put my finger on it. I'm so sorry. I know it's like almost 10 minutes. It's almost like 3:10, and I wanted to make sure the stream's going to be a bit longer. Tonight's having dinner because Dad's cooking it, but yeah, you know what? I don't really know what's happening anymore. So, I got the. You guys can clearly see my brain is shutting down already and just staring at the computer, like wondering, you know what? I am doing Ender's Game. I'm gonna read it. I enjoy the book, reading it and whatnot with everybody, but for some stupid reason, I'm just staring at the camera and I'm just like, the model is good, but he can't capture like the really dumb face. Like, yep, I'm dying. Yeah, I'm dying. Yeah, this is like we're 6 minutes in. I'm already fucking dying. I haven't even started reading yet, and you know what? Let's just start with the rules first of all. If you're new to the stream, hi, welcome to the reading stream, hosted every 2 weeks. After every 2 weeks or so, like in the next, like this week is reading, next week is writing. Then so far, so forth. Okay, so today, as I have said last week, we are going to be reading Ender's Game. And this is a sci-fi book written by classic science fiction, which is written by Orson Scott Card, focusing around a child called Ender who is enlisted into battle school and must go through many trials and tribulations in order to become the best. And yeah, it comes with a lot of consequences, and that's the basic summary. I don't want to spoil anything. So last chapter we covered basic aspects of Ender's life, which is the school, the family, and enlistment. And now we're gonna move on to the battle school, as Twitter has presupposed. And yes, and as you can see up here, I will read the selected story uninterrupted from I will really select the story uninterrupted for a chapter. After that chapter ends, I'll take a 5-minute break to regain breath, and then that's friggin' it. I don't know. That's it. That's it. You can. This is basically one of those streams where you kind of like sit back and hang around. I don't really do anything too much. I just kind of read the story. It's like treat this as an audiobook basically. If you're reading this if you're watching this from a VOD, this is basically the Dylus audiobook. It's non-commercial because if I make money off this, especially this version of Ender's Game, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna actually get in trouble with like the publishers and whatnot. So yeah. Mm. Hand it up. Oh, I don't even want to drink the chalice anymore. All right, so we're delaying. Oh my god, I forgot to realize. You know what the main problem is nowadays with these streams? I always tend to delay. If you look at the time, it's already 8 minutes in, so we gotta stop the music. And today, the last time I didn't turn on any ambient music because for some reason I actually forgot to leave it on. So what I'm gonna do today is we're gonna do something called the what was the full title? ASMR Alien Isolation App Tiny, the computer console convince sounds no aliens on board. And we're gonna use that sound in order to, you know, get into the feel of the story. There's not gonna be anything loud and fancy, but yeah. And like I said the last time, we're gonna do this a bit longer. So you chill back, sit back, relax, do what you need to relax. If you need to open up some browsers to do some stuff, you know what? Go ahead. I don't really mind. Oh god. Okay. Enough of this. Okay. All right, you guys can hear this, right? Everybody can hear this. That's good enough. As long as you can hear this, we can play this. We can read the story. And okay, 3, 2, 1. We're starting chapter 4. Launch. And the dog wants to leave the room already. With Ender, we have to strike a delicate balance. Isolate him enough that he remains creative, otherwise he'll adopt the system here and we'll lose him. At the same time, we need to make sure he keeps a strong ability to lead. If he earns rank, he'll lead. It isn't that simple. Mazer Rackham could handle his little fleet and win. By the time this war happens, there'll be too much, even for a genius. Too many little boats. He has to work smoothly with his subordinates. Oh good, he has to be a genius, and nice too. Not nice. Nice will let the buggers have us all. So you're gonna isolate him. I'll have him completely separated from the rest of the boys by the time we get to the school. I'll have no doubt of it. I'll be waiting for you to get here. I watched the vids of what he did to the Stilson boy. This is not a sweet little kid you're bringing up here. That's where you're mistaken. He's even sweeter than he looks. But don't worry. We'll perch Dad in a hurry. Sometimes I think you enjoy breaking these little geniuses. There is an art to it, and I'm very, very good at it. But enjoy? Well, maybe. When they put back the pieces afterwards, it makes them better. You're a monster. Thanks. Does this mean I get a raise? Just a medal. The budget isn't inexhaustible. They say weightlessness can cause disorientation, especially in children, whose sense of direction isn't yet secure. But Ender was disoriented before he left Earth's gravity, before the shuttle launch even began. There were 19 other boys in his launch. They filed out of the bus and into the elevator. They talked and joked and bragged and laughed. Ender kept his silence. He noticed how Graf and the other officers were watching them, analyzing. Everything we do means something, Ender realized. Them laughing, me not laughing. He toyed with the idea of trying to be like the other boys, but he couldn't think of any jokes, and none of theirs seemed funny. Wherever their laughter came from, Ender couldn't find such a place in himself. He was afraid, and fear made him serious. They had dressed him in a uniform, all in a single piece. It felt funny not to have a belt cinched around his waist. He felt baggy and naked, dressed like that. There were TV cameras going, perched like animals on the shoulders of crouching, prowling men. The command moved slowly, cat-like, so the camera motion would be smooth. Ender caught himself moving smoothly too. He imagined himself being on TV in an interview. The announcer asking him, "How do you feel, Mr. Wiggin?" "Actually quite well, except hungry." "Hungry? Oh yes, they don't let you eat for 24 hours before the launch." "How interesting. I never knew that. All of us are quite hungry actually. And all of the while, during the interview, Ender and the TV guy would slink along smoothly in front of the cameraman, taking long life strides. The TV guy was letting him be the smokeman for all the boys, though Ender was barely competent to speak for himself. For the first time, Ender felt like laughing. He smiled. The other boys near him were laughing at the moment too, for another reason. They think I'm smiling at their joke, thought Ender, but I'm smiling at something much, much funnier. Go up the ladder one at a time, said an officer. When you come to an aisle with empty seats, take one. There aren't any window seats. It was a joke. The other boys laughed. Ender was near the last, but not the very last. The TV cameras did not give up, though. Will Valentine see me disappear into the shuttles? He thought of waving at her, of running to the cameraman and saying, "Can I tell Valentine goodbye?" He didn't know that it would be it's out of tape if he did, for the boys soaring out to battle schools were all supposed to be heroes. They weren't supposed to miss anybody. Ender didn't know about the censorship, but he did know that running to the cameras would be wrong. He walked the short bridge to the door in the shuttle. He noticed that the wall to his right was carpeted like a floor. That was when the disorientation began. The moment he thought of the wall as the floor, he began to feel like he was walking on a wall. He got to the ladder and noticed that the vertical surface behind it was also carpeted. I'm climbing up the floor, hand over hand, step by step. And for fun, he pretended that he was climbing down the wall. He did it almost instantly in his mind, convinced himself that against the best evidence of gravity, until he reached an empty seat. He found himself gripping the seat tightly, even though gravity pulled him firmly against it. The other boys were bouncing on their seats a little, poking and pushing, shouting. Ender carefully found the straps, figured out how they fit together to hold him at crotch, waist, and shoulders. He imagined the ship dangling upside down on the undersurface of the earth, the giant fingers of gravity holding them firmly in place. But we will slip away, he thought. We were going to fall off this planet. He did not know its significance at the time. Later, though, he will remember that it was even before he left Earth that he first thought of it as a planet, like any other, not particularly his own. "Oh, I already figured it out," said Graft. He was standing on the ladder. "Coming with us?" Ender asked. "I don't usually come down for recruiting," Graft said. "I'm kind of in charge there. Administrator of the school. Like a principal. They told me I had to come back or I'd lose my job." He smiled. Ender smiled back. He felt comfortable with Graf. Graf was good, and he was principal of the battle school. Ender relaxed a little. He would have a friend there. Adults helped the other boys belt themselves in place, those who hadn't done as Ender did. Then they waited for an hour while TV at the front of the shuttle introduced them to shuttle flight, the history of space flight, and their possible future with the great starships of the IF. Very boring stuff. Ender had definitely seen those things before. Except that he had not been belted into a seat inside the shuttle, hanging upside down from the belly of Earth. The launch wasn't bad. A little scary. Some jolting, a few moments of panic. That this might be the first failed launch since the early days of the shuttle. The movies haven't made it plain how much violence you could experience, lying your back in a soft chair. Then he was over, and he really was hanging by the straps. No gravity anywhere. But because he had already reorientated himself, he was not surprised when Graf came up the ladder backwards, as if he was climbing down to the front of the shuttle. Nor did it bother him when Graf hooked his feet under a rung and pushed off with his hands, so that suddenly he swung upright, as if it were an ordinary airplane. The reorientations were too much for some. One boy gagged. Ender understood then why they had been forbidden to eat anything for 20 hours before the launch. Vomiting in null gravity wouldn't be fun. But for Ender, Graf's gravity game was fun, and he carried it further, imagining that Graf was actually hanging upside down from the center aisle, and then picturing him sticking straight out from a side wall. Gravity could go any which way, however I want it to go. I can make Graf stand on his head and he doesn't even know it. What do you think is so funny, Wiggin? Graf's voice was sharp and angry. What did I do wrong? Thought Ender. Did I laugh out loud? Ask you a question, soldier, barked Graf. Oh yes, this is the beginning of the training routine. Ender had seen some military shows on TV, and they always shouted a lot at the beginning of the training before the soldiers and officers became good friends. Yes, sir, Ender said. Well, answer it then. I thought of you hanging upside down by your feet. I thought it was funny. It sounded stupid now, with Graf looking at him coldly. To you, I suppose it is funny. Is it funny to anybody else here? Murmurs of no. Well, why isn't it? Graf looked at them all with contempt. Scumbrains, that's what we've got in this launch. Pin-headed little morons. Only one of you had the brains to realize that in null gravity directions are whatever you conceive them to be. Do you understand that, shafts? The boy nodded. No, you didn't. Of course you didn't. Not only stupid, but a liar too. There's only one boy on this launch with any brains at all, and that's Ender Wiggin. Take a good look at him, little boys. He's going to be a commander when you're still in diapers up there, cause he knows how to think in null gravity, and you just want to throw up. This is the way the show was supposed to go. Graf was supposed to pick on him, not set him up as the best. They were supposed to be against each other at first, so that they could become friends later. Most of you are going to ice out. Get used to that, little boys. Most of you are going to end up in combat school because you don't have the brains to handle deep space piloting. Most of you aren't worth the price of bringing you up here to battle school because you don't have what it takes. Some of you might make it, some of you might be worth something to humanity, but don't bet on it. I'm betting on only one. Suddenly, Graf did a backflip and caught the ladder with his hands, then swung his feet away from the ladder. Doing a handstand if the floor was down, dangling by his hands if the floor was up. Hand over hand, he swung himself back along the aisle to his seat. Looks like you've got it made here, whispered the boy next to him. Ender shook his head. Oh, won't even talk to me? The boy said. I didn't even ask him to say that stuff, Ender whispered. He felt a sharp pain on the top of his head. Then again, some giggles from behind him. The boy in the next seat back must have unfastened his straps. Again a blow to the head. Go away, Ender thought. I didn't do anything to you. Again a blow to the head. Laughter from the boys. Didn't Graf see this? Wasn't he gonna stop it? Another blow. Harder. It really hurt. Where was Graf? Then it became clear. Graf had delivery cost him. It was worse than the abuse in the shows. When the sergeant picked on you, the others liked you better. But when the officer prefers you, the others hate you. Hey, fart eater, came the whisper from behind him. He was hit on the head again. Do you like this? Hey, super brain, is this fun? Another plane. This one's so hard that Ender cried out softly with the pain. If Graf was setting him up, there'd be no help unless he helped himself. He waited until he thought another blow was about to come. Now, he thought. And yes, the blow was there. It hurt, but Ender was already trying to sense the coming of the next blow. Now. And yes, right on time. I've got you, Ender thought. Just as the next blow was coming, Ender reached up with both hands, snatched the boy by the wrist, and then pulled down the arm hard. In gravity, the boy would have been jammed against Ender's back seat, hurting his chest. And now gravity, however, he flipped over his seat completely, upwards towards the ceiling. Ender wasn't expecting it. He hadn't realized how null gravity magnified the effects of even a child's movements. The boy sailed through the air, bouncing against the ceiling, then down against another boy in his seat, then out into the aisles. His arms flailing until he screamed as his body slammed into the bulkhead in the front of the compartment. His left arm twisted under him. It took only seconds. Graf was already there, snatching the boy out of the air. Deftly, he propelled him down the aisle up towards the other men. Left arm broken, I think, he said. In moments, the boy had been given a drug and lay quietly in the air as the officer ballooned a splint around his arm. Ender felt sick. He had only meant to catch the boy's arm. No, No, he hadn't meant to hurt him, and had pulled with all his strength. He hadn't meant it to be so public, but the boy was feeling exactly the pain Ender had meant him to feel. Now gravity had betrayed him. That was all. I am Peter. I'm just like him. And Ender hated himself. Graf stayed at the front of the cabins. What are you slow learners? In your feeble little minds, haven't you picked up one little fact? You were brought here to be soldiers. In your old schools, in your old families, maybe you were the big shot. Maybe you were tough. Maybe you were smart. But we chose the best of the best. And that's the only kind of kid you're going to meet now. And when I tell you Ender Wiggin is the best in this launch, take the hint, my little dorklings. Don't mess with him. Little boys have died in the battle school before. Do I make myself clear? There was silence the rest of the launch. The boy sitting next to Ender was scrupulously careful not to touch him. I am not a killer, Ender said to himself and over and over. I am not Peter. No matter what Graf says, I am not. I was defending myself. I bore it a long time. I was patient. I was not what he said. I was not what he said. A voice over the speaker told him they were approaching the school. It took 20 minutes to decelerate and dock. Ender lagged behind the others. They were not unwilling to let him beat the last to leave the shuttle, climbing upward in the direction they had been down when they embarked. Graf was waiting at the end of the narrow tube that led from the shuttle into the heart of the battle school. Was it a good flight, Ender? Graf asked cheerfully. I thought you were my friend. Despite himself, Ender's voice trembled. Graf looked puzzled. Whatever gave you that idea, Ender? Because you spoke nicely to me, and honestly, you didn't lie. I won't lie now either, said Graf. My job isn't to be friends. My job is to produce the best soldiers in the world, in the whole history of the world. We need a Napoleon, an Alexander, except that Napoleon lost in the end, and Alexander flamed out and died young. We need a Julius Caesar, except that he made himself a dictator and died for it. My job is to produce such a creature and all the men and women he'll need to help him. Nowhere in that does it say I have to make friends with children. So you made them hate me. So, what will you do about it? Crawl into a corner? Start kissing their little backside so they'll love you again? There's only one thing that'll make them stop hating you. And that's being so good at what you do that they can't ignore you. I told them that you were the best. Then you damn well better be. What if I can't? Then too bad. Look, Ender, I'm sorry if you're lonely and afraid, but the buggers are out there. 10 billion, 100 billion, a million billion of them, for all we know. With as many ships, for all we know. With weapons we can't understand, and a willingness to use those weapons to wipe us out. It isn't the world at stake, Ender. It's just us. Just humankind. As far as the biosphere, as the rest of the biosphere is concerned, we could be wiped out and it would adjust. It would get on with the next step in evolution. But humanity doesn't want to die. As a species, we've evolved to survive. And the way we do it is by straining, and at last, every few generations, giving birth to genius. The one who invents the wheel, and light, and flight. The one who builds a city, a nation, an empire. Do you understand any of this? Ender thought he did, but wasn't sure, and so said nothing. No, of course not. So I'll put it bluntly. Human beings are free except when humanity needs them. Maybe humanity needs you to do something. Maybe humanity needs me to find out what you're good for. We might both do despicable things, Ender. But if humankind survives, then we were good tools. Is that all? Just tools? Individual human beings are all tools that the others use to help us survive, all survive. That's a lie. No, it's just a half-truth. You can worry about the other half after we win this war. He'll be over before I grow up, Ender said. I hope you're wrong, said Graf. By the way, you aren't helping yourself at all talking to me. The other boys are no doubt telling each other that old Ender Wiggin is back there licking up the Graf. If once one gets around that you're a teacher's boy, you're iced for sure. In other words, go away and leave me alone. Goodbye, Andrew said. He pulled himself hand over hand along the tube where the other boys had gone. Graf watched him go. One of the teachers near him said, "Is that the one?" "God knows," said Graf. "If Ender isn't him, then he'd better show up soon." "Maybe it's nobody," said the teacher. "Maybe. But if that's the case, Anderson, then in my opinion, God is a bugger. You can quote me on that." "I will." And they stood in silence for a while longer. Anderson. The kid's wrong. I am his friend." "I know. He's clean. Right to the heart. He's good. I've read the reports." "Anderson, think what we're going to do to him." Anderson was defiant. "We're gonna make him the best military commander in history, and then put the fate of the world on his shoulders. For his sake. I hope it isn't him. I do." "Cheer up. The buggers may kill us all before he graduates." Graf smiled. "You're right. I feel better already." And alright, that is the end of launch. Alright, 5 minutes time. So that was a very brief, short excerpt as the beginnings of the psychological aspect. Why am I yawning already? It's only 3 o'clock. Okay, well, 5 minutes break. Give me a second. Okay, so that's it for the first chapter of Ender's Game. So, no, for the first chapter of the day. And what I can tell you I can tell you from this going on today is basically, well, how do you put it already? It's basically you can see the beginnings of a very pinpoint case of psychological manipulation, and Ender has it memorized down to a T, so it demonstrates that he can pick up on things quite easily as well. That's like the normal thing, right? There we go. So yeah, as I was saying, the psychological manipulation here is quite interesting because that kind of positive reinforcement actually does make sense in the way that Ender puts it, because yes, if he gets the praise, he gets picked on by the other kids, and in that, Graf is intentionally I think Graf is intentionally like playing on this, and then successfully gets some of the kids riled up, and Ender makes himself an example of someone not to be trifled with after he breaks the hand of the kid. I personally confess that I don't really know. I guess it's a good introductory point, but there's nothing too interesting about this chapter except it demonstrates Graf's dual-sided nature. On one hand, he doesn't want to hurt Ender basically. On the other hand, he has to make a hero, and he is definitely gonna live with it. And as such, his duty comes first, which is a good lesson basically. Duty comes first. Ender himself, yes, dominance asserted. Basically, the dude just broke the kid's hand, and immediately the Graf is like left hand broken. And it's also quite interesting to note that the visualization in this chapter is quite interesting because, well, taking examples for like taking examples for stuff like my own writing, you can quite clearly tell Orson Scott Card actually jumps straight to the point because he's talking from a child's point of view. So it's actually quite interesting to see the action move quite fast. On one paragraph, he's describing here and there, and also only like one scene where he describes his thoughts, but already he's just on the spaceship and already taking off. And the visualization, the imagery of 0G is actually really cool, because 0G is not as something that most people are aware of. Basically, 0G is something that not even I have experienced before. So yeah, it's very interesting to see this for the point of view basically, and to see that it's applied in a very interesting manner. Basically, you can see the inertia. Like if you thought that hand movement was brutal, like when there was gravity, like in no gravity, the kid doesn't even get to react because he just gets sent flying upwards. So in that case, on the small part, that kind of imagery actually is really cool, because 0G is that kind of feeling that you can't really capture unless you're a diver or basically if you swam, you can kind of get that feeling of 0G. But here in actual space, it's a different story, I guess. So yeah. So in the meantime, while I rest, drink up. I need to drink water, man. How are you guys doing today? I didn't talk to anybody. I'm really sorry, but I hope you guys are okay because it is Saturday now, and yeah. I heard you. Okay, I saw just now, Akate, that you kind of died yesterday, which is fine. I hope you're feeling better now. I hope you're much better now, Akate. And for the rest of you, like, what's it called? What's it called? Was it? I hope everyone who's listening in is having a good day. I don't really have anything to do actually. Well, the sad part is usually I have a lot to talk about these chapters, but Ender's Game is that kind of book where you don't really have to look deeper in it. The modern essence of storytelling carries the plot itself quite well. So even if you like read it hand to hand, you won't get as confused as reading what's it called? As reading War of the Worlds, because War of the Worlds, the kind of chapter, imagine working overtime without money. Oh no. Akate, my dear boy. My dear boy, I want to give you a hug. Like I'm gonna give you a hug right now. There you go. There you go. Okay, buddy. It's okay. I give you a hug. I understand how it feels. I don't understand. Wait, no. I've worked overtime before, but I did get compensated. But yeah, in that case, you really need to consult with your boss as much as I don't really know what to do in this case, to be honest. So yeah, I'm hoping for the best for you, man. I hope it goes well. I always got your back. If you got anything, you can always just tell me. That goes for every guy here. All right, so. Alright, 5 minutes is up. We're going to move on to the next chapter, which will be talking about the games. Yes, so hold on. There we go. Okay. I don't know, my hands are a bit rusty. I don't know. Something today is a bit off. It's not even like completely raining. I did tell my dad I wanted to swim, but I think I kind of messed up my arm when I was carrying dog food, so I feel kind of weak on my right arm. Like get rid of the kayfabe. I know the right arm here in my model is mechanical, but like in real life it's obviously flesh, and it kind of hurts. So it kind of like, I think I overstrained because I was walking around with like a heavy 6 kgs of dog food. And that's not a lot because I've carried a lot. I've carried like heavier things in my retail time, but for some reason it just kind of hurts now. Oh well, that's okay. That's okay. That's okay. That's fine. Okay. All right, we're gonna move on to the next chapter, everybody, and this will be chapter 5, video games. You have my admiration. Breaking an arm, that was a masterstroke. Yeah, it was an accident. Really? And I've already commended you in your official retort. It's too strong. It makes that other little bastard into a hero. It could screw up training for a lot of kids. I thought Ender might call for help. Call for help? I thought that was what you valued most in him, that he settles his own problems. When he's out there surrounded by an enemy fleet, there ain't gonna be nobody to help him if he calls. Who'd guess the little sucker be out of his seat, and that he'll land just wrong against the bulkhead? Just one more example of the stupidity in the military. If you had any brains, you'd be in a real career, like selling life insurance. You too, mastermind. We've just got to face the fact that we're second rate, with the fate of humanity in our hands. Gives you a delicious feeling of power, doesn't it? Especially because all this time, if we lose, there won't be any criticism of us at all. I never thought of it that way, but let's not lose. Let's see how Ender handles it. If we already lost him, if he can't handle this, who's next? Who next? Who else? I'll make up a list. In the meantime, figure out how to unloose Ender. I told you his isolation can't be broken. He can never come to believe that anybody will ever help him out. Ever. If he once thinks there's an easy way out, he's wrecked. You're right. That would be terrible. That would be terrible if he believed he had a friends. He can have a friend. He can have friends. It's parents he can't have. The other boys had already chosen their bunks when Ender arrived. Ender stopped in the doorway of the dormitory, looking for the sole remaining bed. The ceiling was low. Ender could reach up and touch it. A child-sized room with the bottom bunk resting on the floor. The other boys were watching him, corner-wise. Sure enough, the bottom bunk right by the door was the only empty bed. For a moment, it occurred to Ender that by letting the others put him in the worst place, he was inviting later bullying. Yet he couldn't very well oust someone else. So he smiled broadly. "Hey, thanks," he said. Not sarcastically at all. He said it as sincerely as if they had reserved him the best position. I thought I was gonna have to ask for a low bunk by the door. He sat down and looked in the locker that stood open at the foot of the bunk. There was a paper taped to the inside of the door. Place your hand on the scanner at the head of your bunk, and you speak your name twice. Ender found the scanner, a sheet of opaque plastic. He put his left hand on it and said, "Ender Wiggin. Ender Wiggin." The scanner glowed green for a moment. Ender closed his locker and tried to reopen it. He couldn't. Then he put on his hand on the scanner and said, "Ender Wiggin." The locker popped open, so did 3 other compartments. One of them contained 4 jumpsuits like the one he was wearing, and one white one. Another compartment contained a small desk, just like the ones at school, so they weren't through with studies yet. It was the largest compartment that contained the prize. It looked like a spacesuit at first glance, complete with helmet and gloves, but it wasn't. There was no airtight seal. Still, it would effectively cover the whole body. It was thickly padded, and it was also a little stiff. And there was a pistol within, a laser gun it looked like, since the end was solid clear glass. But surely they wouldn't let children have lethal weapons, not laser, said man. Ender looked up. It was one he hadn't seen before, a young and kind-looking man. But he has a tight enough beam, well focused. You can aim it and make a 3-inch circle of light on a wall 100 meters off. What's it for? Ender asked. One of the games he played during recreation. Does anyone else have his locker open? The man looked around. I mean, have you followed directions and coded in your voices and hands? You can't get into the lockers until you do. This room is your home for the first year or so here at the battle school. So get the bunk you want and stay with it. Ordinarily, we let you elect your chief officer and install him in the lower bunk by the door, but apparently that position has been taken. Can't recode those lockers now. So think about whom you want to choose. Dinner in 7 minutes. Follow the lighted doors on the floor. Your color code is red, yellow, yellow. Whenever you're assigned a path to follow, it will be red, yellow, yellow. 3 dots by the side. Go where those lights indicate. What's your color code, boys? Red, yellow, yellow. Very good. My name is Dap. I'm your mom for the next few months. The boys laughed. Laugh all you like, but keep it in mind. If you get lost in the school, which is quite possible, don't go opening doors. Some of them lead outside. More laughter. Instead, just tell someone that your mom is Dap, or they'll call me. I'll tell them your color, and they'll light up a path for you to get home. If you have a problem, come talk to me. Remember, I'm the only person here who's paid to be nice with you. But not too nice. Give me any lip, and I'll break your face. Okay? They laughed again. Dap had a room full of friends. Frightened children are so easy to win. Which way is down? Anybody tell me? They told him. Okay, that's true. But that direction is towards the outside. The ship is spinning, and that's what makes it feel like that is down. The floor actually curves around in that direction. Keep going long enough that way, and you'll come back where you started. Except don't try that, because up that way is teachers' quarters. And up that way is the bigger kids. And the bigger kids don't like launchies butting in. You might get pushed around. In fact, you will get pushed around. And when you do, don't come crying to me. Got it? This is battle school. It's not nursery school. What are we supposed to do then? Asked the boy, a really small black kid who had a top bunk near Ender's. If you don't like getting pushed around, figure out for yourself what to do about it. But I warn you, murder is strictly against the rules. So is any deliberate injury. I understand there was one attempted murder on the way up here. A broken arm. That kind of thing happens again, someone ices out. You got it? What's icing out? Asked the boy with his arm puffed up in a splint. Ice, put out in the cold, sent earthside, finished at battle school. Nobody looked at Ender. So boys, if any of you are thinking of being troublemakers, at least be clever about it, okay? Dap left. They still didn't look at Ender. Ender felt the fear growing in his belly. The kid whose arm he broke. Ender didn't feel sorry for him. He was a Stilson. And like Stilson, he was already gathering a gang. A little knot of kids. Several of the bigger ones. They were laughing at the far end of the room, and every now and then, one of them would turn to look at Ender. With all of his heart, Ender wanted to go home. What did any of this have to do with saving the world? There was no monitor now. It was Ender against the gang again. Only they were right in his room. Peter again, but without Valentine. The fear stayed, all through dinner as no one sat by him in the mess hall. The other boys were talking about things. The big scoreboard on one wall. The food. The bigger kids. The Ender could only watch in isolation. The scoreboards were team standings. Win-loss records with the most recent scores. Some of the bigger boys apparently had bets on their most recent games. Two teams, Manticore and Asp, had no recent scores. These boxes were flashing. Ender decided they must be playing right now. He noticed that the older boys were divided into groups, according to the uniforms they wore. Some with different uniforms were talking together, but generally the groups each had their own area. Launchies, their own group, and the two or three next older groups all had plain blue uniforms. But the kids, my tongue hurts. But the big kids, the ones who were on teams, they were wearing much more flamboyant clothing. Ender tried to guess which one went with which name. Scorpion and Spider were easy, so were Flame and Tide. A bigger boy came to sit by him. Not just a little bigger. He looked to be 12 or 13, getting his man's growth started. Hi, he said. wait, what? Why did I say it like that? Hi, he said. Hi, Ender said. I'm Mick. Ender, that's a name? Since I was little. It's what my sister called me. Not a bad name here. Ender. Finisher. Hey, hope so. Hey Ender, you the bugger in your launch? Ender shrugged. I noticed you eating all alone. Every launch has one like that. Kid that nobody takes to right away. Sometimes I think the teachers do it on purpose. Their teachers aren't very nice. You'll notice that. Yeah. So you the bugger? I guess so. Hey, nothing to cry about, you know. He gave Ender his roll and took Ender's pudding. Eat nutritious stuff. It'll keep you strong. Mick dug into the pudding. What about you? Asked Ender. Me? I'm nothing. I'm a fart in the air conditioning. I'm always there, but most of the time nobody knows it. Ender smiled tentatively. Yeah, funny, but no joke. I've got nowhere here. I'm getting big now. They're gonna send me to my next school pretty soon. No way I'll be in tactical school for me. I've never been a leader, you see. Only the guys who get to be leaders have a shot at it. How'd you get to be a leader? Hey, if I knew, you think I'll be like this? How many guys my size you see in here? Not many. Ender didn't say it. A few. I'm not the only half-ice bugger fodder. A few of us. The other guys, they're all commanders. All the guys from my launch have their own teams now. Not me. Ender nodded. Listen, little guy, I'm doing you a favor. Make friends. Be a leader. Kiss butts if you got to. If the other guys despises you, you know what I mean? Ender nodded. Nah, you don't know nothing. You launchies are all alike. You don't know nothing. Mine's like space. Nothing there. And if anything hits you, you fall apart. Look, when you end up like me, don't forget that somebody warned you. It's the last nice things anybody's going to do for you. So why do you tell me? asked Ender. What are you, a smart mouth? Shut up and eat. Ender shut up and ate. He didn't like Mick, and he knew there was no chance he would end up like that. Maybe that was what the teachers were planning, but Ender didn't intend to fit in with their plans. I will not be the bugger of my group, Ender thought. I didn't leave Valentine and mother and father to come here just to be iced. As he lifted the fork to his mouth, he could feel his family around him, as they had always been. He knew just which way to turn his head to look up and see mother, trying to get Valentine not to slurp. He knew just where father would be, scanning the news on the table while pretending to be part of the dinner conversation. Peter, pretending to take a crushed pea out of his nose. Even Peter could be funny. It was a mistake to think of them. He felt a sob rise in his throat and swallowed it down. He could not see his plate. He could not cry. There was no chance that he would be treated with compassion. That was not mother. Any sign of weakness would tell the Stilsons and Peters that this boy could be broken. Ender did what he always did when Peter tormented him. He began to count doubles. 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, and so on. As high as he could hold the... Oh, frick, my throat is really bunged up. And on, as high as he could hold the numbers in his head. 128, 256, 512, 1024. Oh, wow. At 6, it's... Oh, my... I can't say all this. At 67,000... 6,710... 67... Fucking hell. I don't know how to say this number. He began to be unsure. Had he slipped out a digit? Should he be in tens of millions or in the hundred millions or just the millions? He tried doubling again and lost it. 1,342 something. 16? Or 177.38. It was gone. Start over again. All the doubling he could hold. The pain were gone. The tears were gone. He would not cry. Until that night when the lights were dim and in the distance you could hear several boys whimpering for their mothers or fathers or dogs. Then he could not help himself. His lips formed Valentine's name. He could hear her voice laughing in the distance, just down the door. He could see mother passing his door, looking in to be sure he was all alright. He could hear his father laughing at the video. It was also clear and it would never be that way again. I'll be old when I ever see them again. 12 at the earliest. Why did I say yes? What was I a fool for? Going to school would have been nothing, facing Stilson every day. And Peter, he was a peasant. Ender wasn't afraid of him. I want to go home, and he whispered. But his whisper was the whisper he used when he cried out in pain when Peter tormented him. The sound didn't travel farther than his own ears, and sometimes not that far. And his tears could fall unwanted on his sheet, but his sobs were so gentle they did not shake the bed, so quiet that they could not be heard. But the ache was there, thick in his throat and the front of his face, hot in his chest and his eyes. I want to go home. Dad came to the door that night and moved quietly among the beds, touching a hand there, a forehead there. When he went there was more crying, not less. The touch of kindness in his frightening place was enough to push some over the edge into tears. Not Ender though. When Dad came, his crying was over and his face was dry. It was the lying face he presented to mother and father when Peter had been cruel to him and he dared not let it show. Thank you for this, Peter. For dry eyes and silent weeping. You taught me how to hide anything I felt. More than ever. I need that now. This was school. Every day, hours of classes, reading, numbers, history, videos of the bloody battles in space, the Marines spraying their guts all over the walls of the bugger ships, hollows of the clean walls of the fleet, ships turning into puffs of light as the spacecraft killed each other deathly in the deep night. Hold on, I think I forgot to loop this. Okay, give me a second. Alright, there you go. Many things to learn. Ender worked as hard as anyone. All of them struggled for the first time in their lives. As for the first time in their lives, they competed with classmates who were at least as bright as they. But the games, that was what they lived for. That was what filled the hours between waking and sleeping. Dap introduced them to the game rooms on the second day. It was up, way above the decks where the boys lived and works. They climbed gravities to where the gravity weakened, and there in the cavern they saw the dazzling lights of the games. Some of the games they knew, some they had even played at home. Simple ones and hard ones. Ender walked past the two-dimensional games on video and began to study the games the bigger boys played. The holographic games with the objects hovering in the air. He was the only launchy in that part of the room, and every now and then one of the bigger boys would shove him out of the way. What are you doing here? Get lost. Fly off. And of course he would fly into the lower gravity here, leave his feet and soar until he ran into something or someone. Every time though he extricated himself and went back, perhaps to a different spot to get a different angle on the game. He was too small to see the controls, how the game was actually done. But that didn't matter. He got the movement of it in the air, the way the player dug tunnels in the darkness, tunnels of light, which enemy ships would search for, then follow mercilessly until they caught the player's ship. The player could make traps, mines, drifting bombs, loops in the air that forced the enemy ships to repeat endlessly. Some of the players were clever, others lost quickly. Ender liked it better though, when two boys play against each other. Then they had to use each other's tunnels, and it quickly became clear which of them was worth anything at the strategy of it. Winning an hour or so, it began to pall. Ender understood the regularities by then, understood the rules the computer were following, so that he knew he could always, once he mastered the controls, outmaneuver the enemy. Spirals when the enemy was like this, loops when the enemies were like that. Lie in wait at one trap, lay 7 traps, then lure them like this. There was no challenge to it then, just a matter of playing until the computer got so fast that no human reflexes could overcome it. That wasn't fun. It was the other boys he wanted to play. Oh, sorry, that was nasty. Okay, I can't focus. I was just like yawning like crazy. The boys who had been so trained by the computer that even when they played against each other, they each tried to emulate the computer. Think like machine instead of a boy. I could beat them this way. I could beat them that way. I like a turn against you, he said to the boy who had just won. Lazime, what is this? Asked the boy. Is it a bug or a bugger? A new flock of dwarves just came aboard, said another boy. But it talks. Did you know they could talk? I see, answered Ender. You're afraid to play me 2 out of 3. Beating you, said the boy, would be as easy as pissing in the shower, and not as half as fun. I'm Ender Wiggin. Listen up, scrunch face. You're nobody. Got that? You nobody. Got that? You not anybody till you got your first kill. Got that? The slang of the older boy had its own rhythm. Ender picked it up quick enough. If I'm nobody, how come you're scared to play me 2 out of 3? Now the other guys were impatient. Kill the squirt quick and let's get on with it. So Ender took his place at the unfamiliar controls. His hands were small, but the controls were simple enough. It took only a little experimentations to find out which buttons used certain weapons. Movement control was a standard wire ball. His reflexes were slow at first. The other boy, whose name he still didn't know, got ahead quickly. But Ender learned a lot and was doing much better by the time the game ended. Satisfied, Lanche? 2 out of 3. We don't allow 2 out of 3 games. So you beat me the first time I ever touched the game, Ender said. If you can't do it twice, you can't do it at all. They played again, and this time Ender was deft enough to pull off a few maneuvers the boy had obviously never seen before. His patterns couldn't cope with them. Ender didn't win easily, but he won. The bigger boy stopped laughing and joking then. The third game went in total silence. Ender won it quickly and efficiently. When the game ended, one of the older boys said, "About time they replaced this machine. Getting so any pin brain can beat it now." The other word of congratulations. Just total silence as Ender walked away. He didn't go far. Just stood off in near distance and watched as the next players tried to use the things he had shown them. Any pin brain? Ender smiled inwardly. They won't forget me. He felt good. He had won something, and against older boys. Probably not the best of the older boys, but he no longer had that panic feeling that he might be out of his depths. That battle scope might be too much for him. All he had to do was watch the game and understand how things work. Then he could use the system and even excel. It was waiting and watching that cost the most, but during that time he had to endure. The boy whose arm he had broken was out for vengeance. His name, ended quickly, was Bernard. He spoke with his own name with a French accent, since the French, with their arrogant separatism, insisted that the teaching of stand-up not begin until the age of 4, when French language patterns were already set. His accent made him exotic and interesting. His broken arm made him a martyr. And his sadism made him a natural focus for all those who love pain in others. Ender became their enemy. Little things, kicking his bed every time they went in and out of the door, jostling him with his meal tray, tripping him on the ladders. Ender learned quickly not to leave anything out of his outside his lockers. He also learned to be quick on his feet, to catch himself. Maladroit, Bernard called him once, and the name stuck. There were times when Ender was very angry. With Bernard, of course, anger was inadequate. It was the kind of person he was, a tormentor. What enraged Ender was how willingly the others went along with him. Surely they would know there was no justice in Bernard's revenge. Surely they knew that he had struck first and Ender in the shuttle, that Ender had only been responding to violence. If they knew, they acted as if they didn't. Even if they did not know, they should be able to tell him that from Bernard himself that he was a snake. After all, Ender wasn't his only target, and Bernard was setting up a kingdom, wasn't he? Ender watched from the fringes of the group as Bernard established his hierarchy. Some of the boys were useful to him, and he flattered them outrageously. Some of the boys were willing servants, doing whatever he wanted even though he treated them with contempt. But a few chafed under Bernard's rule. Ender, watching, knew who resented Bernard's. Shen was small, ambitious, and easily needled. Bernard had discovered that quickly and started calling him Worm. Because he's so small, Bernard said. Because he wriggles. Look how he shimmies his butt when he walks. Shen stormed off, but he only laughed louder. Look at his butt. See a Worm? Ender said nothing to Shen. It would be too obvious then that he was starting his own competing gang. He just sat with his desk on his lap, looking as studious as possible. He was not studying. He was telling his desk to keep sending a message into the interrupt queue every 30 seconds. The message was to everyone, and it was short and to the point. What made it hard was figuring out how to disguise who it was from, the way the teachers could. Messages from one of the boys always had their names automatically inserted. Ender hadn't cracked the teacher's security system yet, so he couldn't pretend to be a teacher, but he was able to set up a file for a non-existent student, for whom he whimsically named God. Only when the message was ready to go did he try to catch Shen's eye. Like the other boys, he was watching Bernard and his cronies laugh and joke, making fun of the math teacher, who often stopped in mid-sentence and looked around as if he had been left off the bus at the wrong stop and didn't know where he was. Eventually, though, Shen glanced around. Ender nodded to him, pointed to his desk, and smiled. Shen looked puzzled. Ender held up his desk a little, then pointed at it. Shen reached for his own desk. Ender sent the message then. Shen saw it almost once. Shen read it and laughed aloud. He looked at Ender as if to say, "Did you do this?" Ender shrugged to say, I don't know who did it, but it sure as hell wasn't me." Shen laughed again, and several of the other boys who were not close to Bernard's group got out of their desks and looked. Every 30 seconds, the message appeared on every desk, marched around the screen quickly, then disappeared. The boys laughed together. "What's so funny?" Bernard asked. Ender made sure he was not smiling then when Bernard looked around the room, imitating the fear that so many others felt. Shen, of course, smiled all the more defiantly. It took a moment, then Bernard told one of his boys to bring out a desk. "Cover your butt. Bernard is watching." Bernard is watching. God. I love this. Bernard went right with anger. "Who did this?" he shouted. God, said Shen. It sure as hell wasn't you, Bernard said. This takes too much brains for a worm. Ender's message expired after 5 minutes. After a while, a message from Bernard appeared on his desk. I know it was you, said Bernard. Ender didn't look up. He acted, in fact, as if he hadn't seen the message. And Bernard just wants to catch me looking guilty. He doesn't know. Of course, it didn't matter if he knew. Bernard would punish him all the more because he had to rebuild his position. The one thing he couldn't stand was having the other boys laughing at him. He had to make clear who was the boss. So Ender got knocked down in the shower that morning. One of Bernard's boys pretended to trip over him and managed to plant a knee in his belly. Ender took it in silence. He was still watching. As far as the open war was concerned, he would do nothing. But in the other war, the war of the deserts, he had his next attack in place. When he got back from the shower, Bernard was raging, kicking beds and yelling at boys. I didn't write it! Shut up! Marching constantly around every boy's desk was this message. I love your butt. Let me kiss it, Bernard. I didn't write that message, Bernard shouted. After the shouting had been going on for some time, Dap appeared at the door. What's the fuss? He asked. Somebody's been writing messages using my name. Bernard was sullen. What message? It doesn't matter what message. What's it called already? It does to me. Dad picked up the nearest desk, which happened to belong to the boy who bunked above Ender. Dad read it, smiled very slightly, and gave back the desk. Interesting, he said. Aren't you gonna find out who did it? Demanded Bernard. Oh, I know who did it, Dab said. Yes, Ender thought. The system was too easily broken. They mean us to break it, or section of it. They know it was me. Well, who then? Bernard shouted. Are you shouting at me, soldier? Are you shouting at me, soldier? Asked Dab, very softly. At once the mood in the room changed. From rage on the part of Bernard's closest friends and barely contained mirth among the rest, all became somber. Authority was about to speak. No, sir. Everyone knows the name. The system automatically puts on the name of the sender. I didn't write that, Bernard said. Shouting? Asked Dab. Yesterday someone sent a message that was signed God, Bernard said. Really? Said Dab. I didn't know he was signed on to the system. Dab turned and left, and the room was filled with laughter. Bernard's attempt to be the ruler of the room was broken. Only a few stayed with him now. But they were the most vicious, and Ender knew until he was through watching, it would go hard on him. Still, the tampering with the system had done its work. Bernard was contained, and all the boys who had some quality were free of him. Best of all, Ender had done him without sending him to the hospital. Much better this way. Then he settled down to the serious business of designing a security system for his own desk, since the safeguards built into the system were obviously inadequate. If a 6-year-old could break them down, they were obviously put there as a plaything, not serious security. Just another game that the teacher set up for us. And this is one I'm good at. Shen, how do you do that? Shen asked him at breakfast. Ender noted quietly that this was the first time another launchie from his own class had sat with him at the meal. Do what? He asked. Send a message with a fake name. And Bernard's name. That was great. They're calling him Butt Watcher now. Just watcher in front of the teachers. But everybody knows what he's watching. Poor Bernard, Ender murmured. And he's so sensitive. Come on, Ender. You broke into the system. How'd you do it? Ender shook his head and smiled. Thanks for thinking I'm bright enough to do that. I just happened to see it first. That's all. Okay. You don't have to tell me, said Shen. Still, it was great. They ate in silence for a moment. Do I wiggle my butt when I walk? No, Ender said. Just a little. Just don't take such big long steps, that's all. Shen nodded. The only person who'd ever noticed was Bernard. He's a pig, said Shen. Ender shrugged. On the whole, pigs aren't so bad. Shen laughed. You're right. I wasn't being fair to the pigs. They laughed together. And two other launchies joined them. And this isolation was over. But the war was just beginning. Ooh, this is very interesting. Give me a second, huh? I'm gonna be right back because Oh no, the dog is resting here. Okay, stretchy time. What the frick is this? I don't even know what this is. Some weirdo just sent a message to my phone. Okay, I'm gonna have to delete this conversation because I don't know what this is. All right, so as you can see here, this is the very interesting part of Battle School, the games. And you know something about the games? I actually do feel like this is something I can relate to. And if you kind of know and you see it from this perspective, right? And even the security system, I think it's something I am familiar with because in video games, it's the same thing I would do. And they're manipulating the system and beating older gentlemen was something I was particularly fond of. So, in my own point of view, in my history, seeing this chapter is basically catharsis. There are older boys who would make fun of you, who would shove you around, and there are boys of your age who will make fun of you and just dominate you because they're fun. But once you try and figure out that system on your own terms, that's when you know you can win. Although I'm just gonna admit, I'm not as crafty as Ender or technically aptitude. But the way that the games work, and the one where he beats the older boys 2 out of 3, it's also relatable because when I was much younger, I used to play video games meant for older people. I didn't really do that well, but there were times where I could match up with older teenagers and adults and beat them. Not routinely, but in a way that was well, a bit better. Even in games like Battlefield, where I would play quite seriously, and I could beat adults quite constantly to the point where I would get rage messages. So in that aspect, it's similar to Ender's case, except I was much older. Yeah. Okay. So it's a very nice touch, and it does certify that Ender has a grand strategy for all of this. And the one thing I did find very interesting is the pegging down of a bully without the use of physical violence. Bernard, as you can see here, is very typically the school bully, but he's not the grand school bully. He's just like the stepping stone for like the first stage of Ender's life. And it's very interesting to just see it this way because, you know, it feels like it's about to rain outside. Give me a second. Oh goodness, my throat is like burning. So in general, this is actually a really nice chapter to read from the perspective of someone who plays video games quite a fair bit. The idea of video games being used to train children is still an idea that is being entertained today. Not widely used, not widely used, mind you, but it's gotten to a point where it can work. Minecraft, not Minesweepers, like simple games for children. The competitiveness is, well, in like the more competitive stuff like Counter-Strike, but that's obviously not for children. But in games like these, it's designed to be like sports games, like normal sports games, but except it's not only for the students' recreation, it's also to train them into becoming better tacticians. So the underlying purpose of these games is very fascinating, and you can actually see it happen in like normal games as well. The intended purpose of most games is not to train people, but to entertain people. But in after a while, they can be used as this sort of training to how to outsmart person. And basically, you get things like feinting, you get things like combos, you get things like trickstering. No, feinting is the same. Feinting, combos, and locks, spawn locks, and whatnot. And you can see in games like fighting games or, you know, fighting games as well as shooting games, because obviously that's where your opponents are mostly human. You can try and do that in a campaign, but doing it online is just so much more satisfying, isn't it? So let's say, take for example the modern day experience which I can relate from is Modern Warfare. Technically the game wants you to play by its own rules, which is you go around, you see an enemy, you shoot them, which is good. And then the other things that they also want you to learn is map positioning and whatnot. Now what they don't ask you to do is how you want to use those maps. And most people, as far as I know, they like to run into the meat grinder. They like to play on their own terms. And as Ender put it himself, they like to play against the machine. And when they play against the machine, they are not forced to think creatively. And when it comes to Modern Warfare, there is actually room to play creatively. Let's say you want to surprise somebody, you have trip mines, but they also tell you the trip mines also go off and are quite visible. But what they don't tell you is that they can. Sorry, it's 4:15. What they don't tell you is that you can block the mines yourself by shooting it. So yeah, you can also find crafty hiding places. You can just exploit. And I think one of the games that do this is Splitgate, as well as Smash. And those games, when you have things like portals, when you have things like movement, you can just go all out. Remember that hiding spot I did when I was playing Splitgate with Kuroe? Now that was something I exploited, and that is something similar to the theme of games, the chapter. And in of itself, it's a good coping mechanism for the battle score, and that's why I find the chapter very entertaining. After we read the next chapter, I guess we can talk a bit more about this. I would like to hear your opinions about this, because I think the idea of games being used as a tool for like development is super cool and something we could explore in the future. All right, let me move on to the next chapter. There's something going on in my throat, like it's messed up. I gotta go let my dog out for a bit. Give me a second. Goodness, my voice is so painful now. Should I take a small break and just like get water? I think I can. I think I'm gonna go take a. Should I take a? You know what? I have enough autonomy. I'm just gonna go take a water. I'm just gonna fill out my bottle and I'll come back. Yes, I come back. Yes, I know to take care of myself, Akate. I take care of everybody as well. Okay. I got some warm water, so it's all good. I can just read and read and read. I'm not gonna sip. There we go. Warm water would be nice for the throat. I don't know why. Maybe I just talk a lot. Okay, let me put down back my glasses. Isn't it like the alien AS? Isn't like the computer ASMR quite nice? It does fit the theme of Ender's game, so yeah. Okay. Okay, so next chapter is the Giant's Drink. Oh fuck, that was bad. We've had our disappointments in the past, hanging on for years, hoping they'll pull through, and then they don't. Nice thing about Ender, he's determined to ice within the 6 months. Don't you see what's going on here? He's stuck at the Giant's Drink in the mind game. Is the boy suicidal? You never mentioned it. Everybody gets the giant sometime, but Ender won't leave it alone. Like Pinwheel. Everyone looks like Pinwheel at one time or another, but he's the only one who killed himself. I don't think it had anything to do with the Giant's Drink. You're betting my life on that, and look what he's done with his launch group. Wasn't his fault, you know. I don't care. his fault or not, he's poisoning that group. They're supposed to bond, and right where he stands, there is a chasm a mile wide. I don't plan to leave him there very long anyway. Then you better plan again. That launch is sick, and he's the source of the disease. He stays till it's cured. I was the source of the disease. I was isolating him, and it worked. Give him time with the group to see what he does with it. We don't have time. We don't have time to rush too fast with a kid who has much chance of being a monster as a military genius. Is this an order? The recorder's on. It's always on. Your ass is covered. Go to hell. If it's an order, then it's an order. Hold him where he is. Hold him where he is until we see how he handles things in his launch group. Graph, you give me ulcers. You wouldn't have ulcers if you leave the school to me and take care of the fleet yourself. The fleet is looking for a battle commander. There's nothing to take care of until you get me that. Alright, hold on now. More water first. So nice to just have the ability to just read to just get some water break. It's strange to look at. The mug is there, but I don't actually drink it. There's something nice about drinking like lukewarm water as long as it doesn't boil your throat. It's just like, right. I'm also stretchy. Stretchy. There we go. Let me see. I'm trying to read like what is okay. Sorry, I'm also caught about this because in the beginning there's always a discussion between Graf and someone else. I think it's Anderson, but I don't know which one is Anderson. I think the first one is Anderson. Yeah, it definitely is. They filed clumsily into the battle room, like children in a swimming pool for the first time, clinging to the handholds along the side. Null gravity was frightening, disorientating. They soon found that things went better if they didn't use their feet at all. Worse, the suits were confining. It was harder to make precise movements since the suits bent just a bit slower, resisted a bit more than any clothing they had ever worn before. Ender gripped the handhold and flexed his knees. He noticed that along with his sluggishness, the suit had an amplifying effect on movement. It was hard to get them started, but the suit's legs kept moving, and strongly, after his muscles had stopped. Give them a push this strong, and the suit pushes with twice the force. I'll be clumsy for a while. Better get started. So still gripping the handhold, he pushed off strongly with his feet. Instantly he flipped around, his feet flying over his head, and landed flat on his back against the wall. The rebound was stronger, it seemed, and his hand tore loose from the handhold. He flew across the battle room, tumbling over and over. For a sickening moment he tried to attain his old up and down orientation, his body attempting to right itself, searching for the gravity that wasn't there. Then he forced himself to change his view. He was hurtling towards a wall that was down, and once he had control of himself, he wasn't flying, he was falling. This was a dive. He could choose how hard he hit the surface. I'm going too fast to catch hold and stay, but I can soften the impact. I can fly off an angle if I roll when I hit and use my feet. It didn't work at all the way he planned. He went off on an angle, but it was not the one he predicted. Nor did he have time to consider. He hit another wall, this time too soon to have prepared for it. By quite accidentally, he discovered a way to use his feet to control the rebound angle. Now he was soaring across the room again, towards the other boys who still clung to the wall. This time he had slowed enough. Oh wait, hold on, is my voice point? This time he had slowed enough to be able to grip a rung. He was at a crazy angle in relation to the other boy. But once again, his orientation had changed. And as far as he could tell, they were all lying on the floor, not hanging on the wall. And he was no more upside down than they were. What are you trying to do? Kill yourself? Asked Shen. Try it, Ender said. The suit keeps you from hurting yourself, and you can control your bouncing with your legs, like this. He approximated the movement that he made. Shen shook his head. He wasn't trying any full stunt like that. But one boy did take off, not as fast as Ender had, because he didn't begin with a flip, but fast enough. Ender didn't have to see his fate to know that it was Bernard, and right after him, Bernard's best friend, Ally. Ender watched them cross the huge room, Bernard struggling to orient himself to the direction he thought of as the floor, Ally surrendering to the movement and preparing to rebound from a wall. Ender... No wonder Bernard broke his arm in the shuttle, Ender thought. He tightens up when he's flying. He panics. Ender stored the information away for future reference. Another bit of information too. Ally did not push off in the same direction as Bernard. He aimed for a corner of a room. Their path diverged more and more as they flew, and where Bernard made a clumsy, crunching landing and bounce on his wall, Ally did a glancing triple bounce on 3 surfaces near the corner that left him most of his speed and sent him flying off at a surprising angle. Ally shouted and whooped, and so did the boys watching him. Some of them forgot they were weightless and let go of the wall to clap their hands. Now they drifted lazily in many directions, waving their arms trying to swim. Now that's a problem, thought Ender. What if you catch yourself drifting? There was no way to push off. He was tempted to set himself adrift and try to solve the problem by trial and error. But he could see the others, their useless efforts and control, and he couldn't think of what he would do that they weren't already doing. Holding onto the floor with one hand, he fiddled idly with the toy gun that was attached to his suit in front, just below the shoulder. Then he remembered the hand rockets sometimes used by Marines when they did a boarding assault on an enemy station. He pulled the gun from his suit and examined it. He had pushed all the buttons back in the room, but the gun did nothing there. Maybe here in the battle room it would work. There were no instructions on it, no labels on the controls. The trigger was obvious. He had had toy guns, as all children had, almost since infancy. There were 2 buttons that his thumb could easily reach, and several others that his thumb could, several others along the bottom of the shaft that were almost inaccessible without using 2 hands. Obviously, the 2 buttons near his thumb were meant to be instantly usable. He aimed the gun at the floor and pulled back on the trigger. He felt the gun... What's it called? He felt the gun grow instantly warm. When he let go of the trigger, it cooled at once. Also, a tiny circle of light appeared on the floor where he was aiming. He thumbed the red trigger at the top of the gun. Then he pulled the trigger again. Same thing. Then he pushed the white button. It gave a bright flash of light that illuminated a wide area, but not as intensely. The gun was quite cold when the button was pressed. The red button makes it like a laser, but it's not a laser, Dap had said, while the white button makes it a lamp. Neither will be much help when it comes to maneuvering. Ah, hello Pochik. Welcome to the stream. We're reading Ender's Game right now. We're at page 105. So everything depends on how you push off. The course you set when you start. It means we're going to have to get very good at controlling our launches and rebounds. It's all good. My throat is a bit messed up. Yeah, there's something like itching at the top of my throat. I'm drinking quite a lot of water. Okay. There we go. Honey and lemon. Yeah, I'm drinking warm water, but I got nothing. I don't have anything. Oh, you feel better? So no issues. The stream is like basically this is just me trying to learn how to get used to my reading voice, because the reading voice is something I don't actually train, because I don't read to people on a daily basis. So let me just get this out, and we can go back to work. We can go back to reading. Ender looked around the room. A few of the boys were drifting close to walls now, flailing their arms to catch a handhold. Most were bumping into each other and laughing. Some were holding hands and going around in circles. Only a few, like Ender, were calmly holding on to the walls and watching. One of them he saw was Ally. He had ended up on another wall not too far from Ender. On impulse, Ender pushed off and moved quickly towards Ally. Once in the air, he wondered what he would say. Ally was Bernard's friends. What did Ender have to say to him? Still, there was no changing course now, so he walked straight ahead and practiced making tiny leg and hand movements to control which way he was facing as he drifted. Too late. He realized that he had aimed too well. He was not going to land near Ally. He was going to hit him. Here, snag my hand. Ender held out his hand. Ally took the shock of impact and helped Ender make a fairly gentle landing against the wall. That's good, Ender said. We ought to practice that kind of thing. That's what I thought. Only everybody's turning to butter out there. What happens if we get out there together? Will we should be able to push and shove each other in opposite directions. Yeah. Okay? It was an admission that all might not be right between them. Is it okay for us to do something together? Ender's answer was to take Ally by the wrist and get ready to push off. Since they pushed off with different amounts of force, they began to circle each other. Ender made some small hand movements, then shifted the legs. They slowed. He did it again. They stopped orbiting. Now they were drifting evenly. Packed head, Ender, Ally said. It was high praise. Let's push off before we run into that bunch. Then let's meet over in that corner. Ender did not want this bridge into the enemy camp to fail. Last one there says farts in a milk bottle, Ally said. Then slowly, steadily, they maneuver until they faced each other, spread eagle, hand in hand, knee to knee. And then we just scrunched? Asked Ally. They have never done this before, said Ender. They pushed off. It propelled them faster than they expected. Ender ran into a couple of boys and ended up on a wall that he hadn't expected. It took him some moment to reorient and find the corner where he and Ally were to meet. Ally was already headed towards it. Ender plotted a course that would include two rebounds to avoid the largest cluster of boys. When Ender reached the corner, Ally had hooked his arms through two adjacent handholds and was pretending to doze. You win. I want to see a fart collection, Ally said. I stored it in your locker. Didn't you notice? I thought it was my socks. We don't wear socks anymore. Oh, yeah. A reminder that we're both far from home. It took some of the fun out of having mastered a bit of navigation. Ender took his pistols and demonstrated what he had learned about the two thumb buttons. What does it do when you aim at a person? Asked Ally. I don't know. Why don't we find out? Ender shook his head. We might hurt somebody. I mean, why don't we shoot each other in the foot or something? I'm not Bernard. I've never tortured cats for fun. Oh, it can't be too dangerous, or they wouldn't give these guns to kids. We're soldiers now. Shoot me in the foot. No, you shoot me. Let's shoot each other. They did. Immediately, Ender felt the leg of the suit grow stiff, immobile at the knee and ankle joints. You frozen? Stiff as a board. Let's freeze a few. Let's have our first war. Us against them. They grinned. Then Ender said, better invite Bernard. Oh? Ally cocked his eyebrow. And Shen, that little butt wiggler. Ender decided that Ally was joking. If you didn't hold yours so tight, it would wiggle too. Ally grinned. Let's go get Bernard and Shen and freeze these bugger lovers. In 20 minutes, everyone in the room was frozen except Ender, Bernard, Shen, and Ally. The four of them sat there whooping and laughing until Dab came in. I see you've learned how to use your equipment, he said. Then he did something to a control that he held in his hands. Everyone drifted slowly towards the wall that he was standing on. He went among the frozen boys, touching them and thawing their suits. There was a tumult of complaint that it wasn't fair how Bernard and Ally had shot them all when they weren't ready. Why weren't you ready? You had your suits just as long as they did. You had just as many minutes as flapping around like drunken ducks. Stop moaning and we'll begin. Ender noticed that it was assumed that Bernard and Ally were the leaders of the battle. Well, that was fine. Bernard knew that Ender and Ally had learned to use the gun together. And Ender and Ally were friends. Now others might believe that Ender had joined his group, but it wasn't so. Ender had joined a new group, Ally's group. Bernard had joined it too. It wasn't obvious to everybody. Bernard still blustered and sent his cronies on errands. But Ally now moved freely through the whole room, and when Bernard was crazy, Ally could joke a little and calm him down. When it came time to choose their launch leader, Ally was almost an animus choice. Bernard sulked for a few days, then he was fine. and everyone settled into the new pattern. What's it called? The launch was no longer divided into Bernard's in-group and Ender's outcasts. Ally was the bridge. Okay, let me grab some water first. Of this chapter, I might stop because I think the stream is... I think the reading today was not too good because of the throat. Oh boy, that's good. There's good stuff. Yay. Alright, so let's continue. Ender sat on his bed with his desk on his knees. It was private study time, and Ender was doing free play. It was a shifting, crazy kind of game in which the school computer kept bringing up new things, building a maze that you could explore. You could go back to the events that you liked for a while, if you were left one alone too long and it disappeared and something else took its place. Sometimes they were funny things, sometimes exciting ones, and he had to stay quick to stay alive. My auntie just messaged me. He had lots of deaths, but that was okay. Games like this, games were like that. You died a lot until you got the hang of it. His figure on the screen had started out as a little boy. For a while it had changed into a bear. Now it was a large mouse with long and delicate hands. He ran his finger under a lot of large items and furniture depicted on the screen. He had played it with the cat a lot, but now it was boring, too easy to dodge. He knew all of the furniture. Not through the mouse hole this time, he told himself. I'm sick of the giant. It's a dumb game and I can't ever win. Whatever I choose is wrong. But he went through the mouse hole anyway, and over the small bridge in the garden. He avoided the ducks and the dive-bombing mosquitoes. He had tried playing with them, but they were too easy. And if he played with the ducks too long, he turned into a fish that he didn't like. Being a fish reminded him too much of being frozen in the battle room, his whole room rigid, waiting for the practice to end so Dab would thaw him. So as usual, he found himself going up the rolling hills. The landslides began. At first, he got caught again and again, crushed in an exaggerated blot of gore oozing out from under a rock pile. Now though, he had mastered the skill of running up the slopes at an angle to avoid the crush, always seeking higher ground. And as always, the landslides finally stopped being jumbles of rocks. The face of the hill broke open, and instead of shale, it was white bread, puffy, rising like dough as the crust broke away and fell. It was soft as spongy. His figure moved more slowly. And when he jumped off the bread, he was standing off on the table. Giant loaf of bread behind him, giant stick of butter beside him, and the giant himself leaning his chin in his hand, looking at his hand. Ender's figure was about as tall as the giant's head from chin to brow. I think I'll bite your head off, said the giant, as he always did. This time, instead of running away or standing there, Ender walked his figure up to the giant's face and kicked him in the chin. The giant stuck out his tongue and Ender fell to the ground. How about a guessing game? Asked the giant. So it didn't make any difference. The giant only played the guessing game. Stupid computers. Millions of possible scenarios in its memories, and the giant could only play one stupid game. The giant, as always, set two huge shot glasses, as tall as Ender's knees, on the table in front of him. As always, two were filled with different liquids. The computer was good enough that the liquids had never repeated, not that he could remember. This time, the one had thick, creamy-looking liquid. The other hissed and foamed. One is poison, and one is not. Guess right, and I'll take you into fairyland. Guessing meant sticking his head into one of the glasses to drink. He never guessed right. Sometimes his head was dissolved. Sometimes he caught on fire. Sometimes he fell in and drowned. Sometimes he fell out, turned green, and rotted away. It was always ghastly, and the giant always laughed. Was it any? Ender knew that whatever he chose, he would die. The game was rigged. On the first death, his figure would reappear on the giant's table to play again. On the second death, he'd come back to the landslides, and then to the garden bridge, then to the mouse hole, and then if he still went back to the giant, He played again and died again. His desk would go dark. Free play over, would march around the desk, and Ender would lie on his bed and tremble until he could finally go to sleep. The game was rigged, but still the giant talked about Fairyland. Some stupid, childish 3-year-old's Fairyland that probably had some stupid Mother Goose or Pac-Man or Peter Pan. It wasn't even worth getting to, but he had to find some way of beating the giant to get there. He drank the creamy liquid. Immediately he began to rise like a balloon. The giant laughed. He just did again. He played again, and this time the liquid set like concrete, and he held his head down while the giant cut him open along the spine, deboned him like a fish, and began to eat while his arms and legs quivered. He reappeared at the landslides and decided not to go on. He even let the landslides cover him once, but even though he was sweating and he felt cold, with his next slide he went back up the hills till they turned into bread, and stood on the giant's table as the shot glasses were set before him. He stared at the two liquids, one foaming, the other with waves in it like the sea. What's it called already? He tried to guess what kind of death each one held. Probably a fish will come out of the ocean one, and eat me. The foamy one will probably asphyxiate me. I hate this game. It isn't fair. It's stupid. It's rotten. And instead of pushing his face into one of the liquids, he kicked one over, then the other, and then dodged the giant's hand as the giant shouted, "Cheater! Cheater!" He jumped at the giant's face, clambered up his eyes, lips, and nose, and began to dig in the giant's eye. The stuff came away like cottage cheese, and as the giant screamed, Ender's figure burrowed into the eye, climbed right in, and burrowed in and in. The giant fell over backwards. The view shifted as he fell, and when the giant came to rest, there were intricate, lacy trees all around. A bat flew up and landed on the dead giant's nose, and then brought his figure up out of the giant's eye. "How do you get here?" the bat asks. "No one ever comes, and nobody ever comes here." The Ender could not answer, of course, so he reached down, took a handful of the giant's eye stuff, then offered it to the bat. The bat took it and flew off, shouting as he went, "Welcome to Fairyland." He had made it. He ought to explore. He ought to climb down from the giant's face and see what he had finally achieved. He signed off, put his desk in his locker, stripped off his clothes, and pulled his blanket over himself. He hadn't meant to kill the giant. This was supposed to be a game, not a choice between his own grisly death and an even worse murderer. I'm a murderer even when I play. Peter would be proud of me. Okay, so that's the end of chapter. What's it called? Chapter 6. Let me cheat. Let me see how many chapters are there in 7. In green brown. Okay. Let me see how many pages this is, because I don't think I can cover this in the next 20 minutes. So I might actually just... Oh my goodness, there is a lot. Yeah, that's a lot. From page 116 to page 154. So I will have to cover a lot of pages. So I think it's fair to say I can stop here. Yeah, this not much, because I don't want to push my throat a bit too much, and I feel like right now it's in a pretty bad spot. So I apologize for ending the stream. I just want to make sure my throat is not too screwed up. Very sorry, everybody. I know I wanted to go on for like 2 hours or more. However, I think with the state of my throat and probably from not drinking enough water, I don't think it's possible for me to keep going on. So unfortunately, I will have to put a stop to the stream here. But for what it's worth, Ender had beaten an impossible game and he feels bad about it, because I think the Giants drink this free play looks very much like a hyper realistic one of those creepypasta games. And to a kid, that scares the shit out of people, you know that? So I kind of understand where he comes from because it feels like that place is all the brutality is just, you know, there, and it scares the shit out of people. So yeah. And then there's not much I can say except the zero G scene is actually quite interesting because it now settles that there is a new dynamic in the launch group that he was in, and no longer is Bernard in charge. Now it's Ally who is the bridge, and it's very interesting to see that this is happening, and that you know that there is a change of dynamic, and that Ender was working his way to a more reputable position. And you can kind of see it in the way, and you can kind of see this happening frequently as the battle room is, as the battle, as the command battle, is it battle room? Battle room is where Ender will be proving himself for the next few chapters. So yes, it's gonna be quite interesting moving on from this point onwards. So I'm just gonna close the music for a bit, and then after that just turn on the chatting music because I think there's not much I can chat about except the Giants game is, for its time, quite traumatizing. If you're not used to the gore, and I believe the free play thing is just gonna be like a bit scary, isn't it? Mm. So yeah, that's it for today. Thank you for joining in. So thank you for joining me on for Ender's game today. I'm sorry that I cannot progress anymore. Chapter 8, which is the Salamanders, which is the first proper group that Ender starts to join, is going to be quite an interesting read the next time we do the reading stream. But with the state of my throat right now, with the pain on the top of my tongue, I don't think I can continue on reading reasonably. So yeah, there's not much I can say. Except now that with my mind settled from yesterday's stream, I'll probably go back to doing normal campaign streams. So I was watching a trailer for a game that I beat before, which is Black Mesa. So yeah, what I'm going to say is that next week I will probably try and play Black Mesa. I'm gonna download it now instead. Actually, I'm gonna download it now, and let me see where it starts me off, and then after that we can just put that as a game. And yeah, for those here, thank you a lot for just joining the stream, even if the stream looks a bit bugged right now, but it's okay. I'm trying my best to upkeep everything, and everyone's support yesterday, including my own father's discussion about it today, actually helps me a lot. So it's not all about. So I don't want to make sure I don't want to end up being one person who moves a lot, because I know I've been doing that quite frequently. So I'm making changes. So do be assured of that. And with next week, the campaign streams will be hopefully good, and with the glasses and whatnot, it should be fine. And you know what? I'm happy. I'm happy right now. Doing the reading stream is actually quite chill. I just sit here and read all Ender's game. That's pretty nice, isn't it? So with that, thank you all for coming to my stream, reading stream. And as always, I hope you mercenaries will have a great day. It is Saturday, so you guys should take care of yourselves and make sure you stay hydrated. Not like me, because now my voice is all kinds of screwed up. Ow. In pain, in very big pain. So with that, thank you everybody. Glory be a day. Have a good one. Okay? Bye bye.